Hello everyone, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh and Ramadan Kareem. Thank you very much for joining us for this talk on how we can provide a safe cyber world for women. My name is Bushra ALAHMADI and I have recently finished my PhD in cybersecurity from the University of Oxford. I'm also a GDG lead in Oxford, UK. Here's my Twitter handle. If you have any follow-up questions after the talk, please feel free to send me your questions. And for this talk, I will start first by talking about the cyber threats that women face in the cyber world, and then I will talk about tools and applications available for us as machine learning experts or as developers that can help us tackle this problem and help in making the cyberspace a safe place for everybody. So let's start by talking about the threats. And the internet is an incredible tool, and it's empowered women to speak up, react, and organize together to face oppression. It has allowed women to connect from all around the world, to share ideas, share pains and successes and achievements, and amplify our voices, bringing us women together. But the internet is not a very neutral place. It has sexist, racist, Islamophobic, and other types of behavior and content that are disproportionately affecting women. And the reason behind that is people hide behind the anonymity that is provided by the online world. And in a time where we women have fought so hard to be heard, to speak up, and to voice our opinions, the brutal world we all face online of harassment, bullying, shaming, have really impacted our confidence, our self-esteem, and also our passion to make an impact on the world, and that has forced us back to silence. Women are more likely to be subject to online harassment and violence, as well as massive campaigns of abuse and intimidation or exploitation and manipulation of private data. So what we'll do in this talk is that we will address threats that impact people in general in the online world, but also focus on the effect that they have on women in particular. So let's start with online harassment. What do we mean when we say online harassment? So online harassment is cyberbullying or cyber harassment is a form of bullying or harassment where the perpetrator uses electronic means, for example, using online platforms like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and so on, to repeatedly impose harm on an individual. And the harmful behavior can include posting rumors, posting threats, posting sexual remarks, and the victim's personal information, or also hate speech on these social media platforms or online platforms in general. So why do you think harassment is highly frequent in online platforms? There are many reasons, but mostly there are two factors. One, little accountability of malicious attackers leading to a feeling of impunity. So perpetrators hide behind the anonymity of the internet, feeling that they can post harmful content because they will not be caught and held accountable. Also, the lack of knowledge of companies and developers about the violence and abuse that happen in their infrastructures. And even now, they know it exists. It is still a challenge in detecting and stopping such abusive content, and such platforms are still trying to build solutions that tackle this problem effectively. And for example, in 2017, there was a movement on Twitter using hashtag Women Boycott Twitter, because women were frustrated by how Twitter were handling women harassment on their platforms. So the victims themselves on online platforms feel that they are left with little support for the violence they have encountered. Unfortunately, this leads women to self-censor, restricting their freedom of expression and their meaningful participation online. And the main harassment we face as women are from those that try to undermine our intelligence and knowledge and our righteousness of being in leadership positions. For example, saying phrases that I believe many women heard is that you belong in the kitchen, or that you are in that position because of your husband. Another form of abuse is cyberstalking. And cyberstalkers may use email, instant messages, phone calls, and other communication modes to stalk you. Cyberstalking can take the form of sexual harassment, inappropriate contact, or unwelcome attention to your life and to your family's activities that leads to the person being stalked being intimidated or frightened. So cyberstalking can start from the cyber world and leading to being stalked as well in the physical world. And in that, the stalker uses technology to monitor and locate the victim's location, their friends and relatives, as well as identify personal information like where you work and where you get your coffee and so on. And finding such information is not really difficult to find out, really, with more and more people posting their pictures and sharing what they ate and their everyday movements on social media. And there are many stories of perpetrators invading a person's home because they knew they were on a holiday from their social media posts. So a person might be stalked online to find out their location, as well as for identity theft, collecting your personal information and stealing your identity, and other harmful objectives. And to protect yourself from such a threat, you need to think about your digital footprint, so limiting the personal information you post online. For example, how many friends on Facebook do you have? So the average Facebook user has around 338 friends. And chances are you've never actually met some of these people and don't know who they are. And criminals can exploit this carelessness by befriending you, and then they monitor your account to collect information. For example, they can look for vacation photos outside your home city or country, which means your house is probably empty, and they break into it. So it's never too late to delete your personal information. And there are regulations such as the GDPR that was enforced last year and gives the right for individuals to have their personal data erased from platforms such as Facebook, what is called the right to be forgotten. Doxxing is another threat in the cyber world. And the perpetrator publishes the victim's personal information online for the intention to threaten, abuse, or harass. So your personal information might include your name, phone number, address, information about your family, where you live, or even photos about without your consent to cause harm. The perpetrator can post a statement online, for example, on social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook, and that post can cause serious harm to a person's reputation. So this kind of act is called defamation. And what a person can do if you are faced with defamation is, of course, you can file a complaint and hire lawyers and go to court. Unfortunately, this is a very long and painful process. And the kind of defamation statement, it can be either written, so someone has written something online about you, or it can include images, so posting images of yourself, or spoken, so someone saying something about you. But the thing that you have to consider for it to be defamation in most countries is that that statement or picture should need to be untrue for it to be considered defamation in court. However, there are some countries that consider even communicating a true statement is defamation if the end goal was to ruin your reputation. So let's talk about the story of Purnima. So in 2001, Purnima was only a 13-year-old girl when she was gang raped in Bangladesh. It was in newspapers all around the world. But 15 years later, Purnima was still being abused and shamed on social media. And in 2013, she discovered a Facebook page using her name and photo with her office address and phone number. And in that page, there were posts of inappropriate words and photos of women and posts indicating that she was available for hire. At the time, Purnima was working at a local TV station where many of her friends and colleagues accepted friend requests from that Facebook account, thinking that it was genuine. The page and its post was the object of malicious gossip that led her to leave her job as society continued to shame her for posts that were not hers and for something that was never her doing. So she never found out who was behind that Facebook page, which has finally taken down earlier in 2016 after Purnima, with the help of a friend, filed repeated complaints. So it took them 3 years to have that Facebook page removed. So this is an example of defamation, where someone stole Purnima's identity, posted inappropriate statements and pictures claiming it's from her, so that's the untrue statement, and the goal was to harm her reputation. And this leads us to talk about another threat that has emerged due to advances in AI that is unfortunately being used by perpetrators. So morphing, the idea of morphing, was originally used to create visuals in advertisements, movies, and animations. However, with the technology becoming easily accessible, its negative impacts have started to surface on social media and on the internet. One example of its negative use is deepfakes. So deepfakes are synthetic media in which a person in an existing image or video is replaced with someone else's likeness. The main machine learning method used to create deepfakes are based on deep learning. And of course, like with everything else, deepfakes can be used negatively by perpetrators to generate revenge pornographic videos and fake news. And this has led both industry and government to attempt to detect them and limit their use. And we have already seen real-world examples of deepfake pornography being used explicitly to silence and discredit women's voices and prevent them from taking part in politics. One example of creating deepfakes to discredit women is the story of Rana. So Rana is an Indian investigative journalist that found herself the victim of a pornographic deepfake that spread on WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram in a clear attempt to discredit her work and humiliate her into silence. And due to her job as a journalist, some seek to discredit her with misogynist statements and abuse. In fact, people have called her even the most abused woman in India. And due to her reporting of a story about an 8-year-old girl that has been raped, there was outrage about that across the country. She was, as a result, a victim of a deepfake porn plot intended to silence her. Someone even created a deepfake of her face in a pornographic video. She was harassed and doxxed off the back of the deepfake, where she now says that she has since been much more cautious of what she posts online. And Rana's reluctance and self-censoring of what she posts online is not really a surprise, especially in countries like in MENA, where a photoshopped photo or a pornographic video can lead to serious harm to women or even lead to death. So pictures that a woman in the West would post without a second thought might, in parts of North Africa and the Middle East and South Asia, be extremely controversial. So what would you consider to be a controversial picture in the MENA region? A study was actually conducted and found that poses like duck face or provocative poses, dancing, showing emotional like cuddling, or even posting your relationship status is considered controversial in MENA region. And all sensitive information and defamation, whether posting written statements or photos, can cause serious harm and shame to women. So not only do we need as developers to think about solutions to detect such threats, yes, detection is important, but what is equally as important is to create awareness to families that these technologies exist and a deepfake of their daughter does not mean it's true. So we talked about some threats that women face in the cyber world, and there are many, many more. And when women around the world are using their collective power to speak out and amplify their voices through social media platforms, online platforms' failure to adequately tackle violence and abuse on the platform means that instead of women using their voices to impact the world, women are instead being pushed backwards to a culture of silence. And this leads to women choosing to remain nameless and faceless in social media platforms out of fear. And in fact, a poll that was conducted in June 2017 using an online survey of 500 women across 8 countries about the psychological impact of abuse. And the number one impact abuse has on women is low self-esteem. So affecting their confidence and apprehension, so anxiety and fear of using online platforms, as well as the sense of powerlessness. So what do you do if you're a victim of online harassment or abuse? So one thing's for sure is you should report them. So platforms now allow you to report harassment online. And as we saw in Purnuma's story, she reported the Facebook page in 2013 only to be removed in 2016. And hopefully that has improved from then, but you still may need to repeatedly report in order for it to be removed. And if you're afraid of calling out and reporting the perpetrator yourself, there are platforms that exist, for example, HeartMob, which is a tool where people can document harassment they are experiencing on social media and request the support they need from an online community. For example, they offer HeartBot, which is a Twitter bot that will call out the perpetrator itself. So how it works is if someone is posting abusive or harassment posts on Twitter, you can send that tweet via direct messaging on Twitter, and the bot will reply and ask you to confirm that you are registered as a HeartMobber. And a HeartMobber is a volunteer that reports abuse on Twitter. So once you authenticate, it then replies directly to the abusive tweet and calling them out as a harasser. So this approach, although might not stop the abuse from happening, but it removes the sense of impunity and lack of accountability that perpetrators might feel due to the anonymity nature of the internet, and calling them out and shaming them on Twitter. So hopefully, knowing that they have been called out will stop them and make them think again before posting anything abusive. And of course, as there are people around the world who are allies that help women tackle the abuse they face in social media platforms. So as well as detecting the online abuse on social media, we can also develop solutions that help allies protect those who are facing abuse on social media. And I ask you this question: do you know how to report online harassment or abuse in your country? Yes, there are platforms that you can use to report abuse you face from people online and that reside in your own country. But what about if the perpetrator is from outside of your country? What happens if the perpetrator that is targeting you does not live in your own country? And that's a challenge that we have to think about when building solutions that tackle this issue. How would the proposed solution tackle abuse across jurisdictions? So when a crime happens in the physical world and the criminal resides in another country, then the International Criminal Police Organization, more commonly known as Interpol, is an international organization that facilitates worldwide police cooperation and crime control. However, such an organization for cyber criminals is still a challenge and is yet to be solved. So think about cross-country jurisdictions when you develop your solutions. So we talked about the various threats that people face in the online world in general and their impact they have on women in particular. And as you can see, it's really an ongoing problem that requires us as technologists to brainstorm and think of ideas to tackle this important issue. So let's talk about the available tools that are at our disposal that we can use to develop solutions. So first, let's talk about how we can use technology to detect deepfakes. So deep learning has given rise to technologies that would have been thought impossible only a handful of years ago. So deep learning, as it can be used for the greater good, it can also be used by perpetrators to cause harm, such as revenge porn, as we saw in Rana's story. And this has elicited responses from both industry and government to detect and limit their use and detect that, as is currently an ongoing challenge. And as you know, the most difficult thing when building AI and machine learning model is the presence of a good data set to train and evaluate your models. And in collaboration with Jigsaw, Google AI announced early this year the release of a large data set of visual deepfakes. So it's called Face Forensics++, is a forensic data set consisting of 1,000 of original video sequences that have been manipulated with 4 automated face manipulation methods. So deepfakes, face-to-face, face swap, and neural textures. So if you search for Face Forensics++, you can find the dataset on GitHub. And many of these online harassment happen in social networks such as Facebook and Twitter. So let's talk about how we can use social network analysis. So there are many tools available that you can use to do social network analysis. So social network analysis tools facilitate the analysis of social networks by describing networks' features either via visual or numerical representation. So it generally uses networks or graph theory to examine social structures. And the main components in the graph are nodes that represent the people and the edges that connect them. And this is useful, for example, when you want to detect who is the leader or who started the harassment of a campaign against an individual. So below we have examples of tools, the most effective social network analysis software that are available for free. And the first one is, which is Network X, is Python library. So you can use it with Python-based machine learning libraries. So let's talk about image detection. When we talked about Purnima story, Purnima found a Facebook page that was using her photo, stealing her identity and affecting her reputation. She was able to find that page when a friend told her about it. However, now Facebook has a feature called photo review that you can enable. And in that, it means Facebook can send you notifications when someone posts a photo with you in the picture that you can review and approve. And this could be helpful in cases which one person tries to impersonate another, or when you fear adding photos of yourself because you are worried they might end up in the wrong hands or be widely distributed without your permission or knowledge. So for this feature, they obviously use face recognition to detect these images, and there are privacy implications, of course, that we don't have the time to discuss. But you can, of course, opt out of this feature in your Facebook setting if you don't want to. And of course, there are many other kind of APIs that you can use from Google Cloud, such as Cloud Vision, Video Intelligence, and so on. And I'm sure you can find many talks available on these platforms on YouTube. But I will briefly talk about text analysis, which we can do using the Google Cloud Natural Language API, as well as other tools that are available. So we talked about how perpetrators can post abusive and harmful posts targeting an individual online. So when designing tools that can be used to detect harmful posts, the immediate approach that might come to your mind is text analysis, meaning analyzing the text in a post to determine if it's a normal or abusive post, and that should be reported. And one of the tools available for text analysis is Google's Cloud Natural Language API. So the Cloud Natural Language API provides natural language understanding technologies to developers, including sentiment analysis, entity analysis, entity sentiment analysis, content classification, and syntax analysis. So entity analysis inspects the given text for known entities, for example, proper nouns such as public figures, landmarks, etc. Analyzing a sentence syntax, meaning the arrangement of words in a sentence, such as that they make grammatical sense. Also text classification, known as text tagging or text categorization, is the process of categorizing text into organized groups. So by using natural language processing, text classifiers can automatically analyze text and then assign a set of predefined tags or categories based on its contents. So these are various ways you can use the Cloud Natural Language API to learn more about the text that you're analyzing. And we mentioned also that Google Natural Language API provides sentiment analysis, which I think is very useful in the problem we're trying to tackle. So sentiment analysis is the interpretation and classification of emotion. So classifies emotions into positive, negative, and neutral within text data using text analysis techniques. So sentiment analysis allows businesses to identify customer sentiment towards a product, brand, or service in online conversation and feedback. So you can analyze the text and know what's your customer sentiment towards a specific product. They either like it or don't like it, or they are neutral about it. And sentiment analysis is useful, especially in detecting abusive content, because it lets you know whether a post is positive, negative, or neutral, which is useful when you're trying to detect harassment posts online. Another tool that has been applied mainly in research is the use of LIWC, so linguistic inquiry and word count, which is a tool that performs analysis on text and determines the psychological traits of the person that wrote it. So you can find many research papers that uses LIWC to detect harmful content online. So what do all these text analysis tools have in common? Well, they work wonderfully in many languages except Arabic. And as you can see, Cloud NLPA, Natural Language Processing API, does not support Arabic, which is one of the main reasons online platforms struggle to automatically detect harassment and abusive content written in Arabic. So let's talk about Arabic's text analysis and why it's a challenge. So there are many reasons for it being challenging. So Arabic is the official language in 24 different countries. That means various Arabic dialects and use of slang words differ among regions in MENA. And that makes it challenging when creating a dictionary that defines meanings of words for these dialects and be used in text analysis. For example, there is a lack of a dictionary that represents the various words that represents abuse across these different dialects in these 24 different countries. Also, the lack of capitalization in Arabic for words to express emotions like anger or attention. So in English, if you want to express such emotions, you would use all caps when you write a word. But instead of capitalization, Arabic uses word elongations, so repeated sequences of letters. So this elongation leads to misclassification of words. Another point is the deliberate misspelling of words used to reduce the number of letters in a tweet in order to meet the Twitter limitation of 140 characters. So such word compressions can mislead spelling correction and word normalization tools. Arabic diacritization can lead to misspelled words as well. Twitter users often disregard adding discretization to the word, but instead use letters in the word to reflect the pronunciation sound of the diacritization. Also, using symbols to reflect letters in the words leads to misspellings and confuses attempts to automatically determine the word meaning. For example, when we use the number 3 for the letter Ain. And Arabic researchers have been working hard to address the challenge of Arabic text processing. And Farasa is a very good tool. If you are interested, you can find it on GitHub that you can use for text analysis. As you can see, we still have a long way to go for detecting online harassment and providing a safe cyberspace that is free from harassment and abuse for everyone. I hope that this talk gave you an overview of the kind of harassments that we face and hopefully give you some inspirations on how we can tackle them using the tools I discussed, especially those tools that are for Arabic natural language processing. As I have mentioned, one of the reasons that Arabic text analysis is a challenge is the lack of a proper dictionary that reflects the various phrases used by the 24 Arabic countries and the various dialects. To make a start, I have created a simple Google form where you can contribute and list the Arabic phrases and words that are used to represent the various forms of abuse that you know from the dialects of your country. So please go to this form and fill it out and help in making the cyber world a welcoming space for everyone. Before I end my talk, I want to leave you with these points that you should consider when developing solutions for this problem space. So you can develop your solutions to detect abuse when it happens, or also deter abuse by discouraging the perpetrators by instilling doubt or fear of the consequences, meaning instill fear that if they do post something that is abusive or some kind of harassment online, that they will be held accountable. Also you can develop solutions to provide supports to victims during and after abuse. So such support can be emotional support or a guidance of what to do to handle this kind of abuse. You can develop solutions to provide support to allies, people who want to help make the cyberspace a safe place for everyone. You can develop solutions that provide awareness on threats. as we discussed, deepfakes is currently a very big problem. So how can we develop awareness to families that if they do see a deepfake or an image, that does not mean it's true? The second point is that you should consider the legal constraints in your country and those internationally that will impact the solution. Are there any privacy implications of your solutions? So think about regulations such as GDPR that might restrict their use of certain data due to privacy implications. Also, if you're considering incorporating Arabic natural languages processing in your project, think about the challenges that we talked about and how you would go about addressing them. The last point is, think about if your solution can be easily integrated into existing technologies. So if you're building a solution that is incorporated into social media platforms like Twitter and Facebook, how feasible will that integration be? For example, the Heart bot that we talked about is a proposed solution and uses bots on Twitter. So will your solution be a standalone platform, or will it need to be incorporated by Twitter and Facebook within their own infrastructure? So think about that when you develop the solutions. With these tips, I conclude my talk. Thank you very much for listening, and hopefully this talk gave you some inspiration and idea of how you can develop technological solutions to tackle this very important problem. I'm really looking forward to hearing about all the solutions that you come up with. Thank you again, and here's my Twitter handle. Feel free to send me any questions you have about this talk.